Good evening and welcome. I'm your host Mr. Ramsay, and tonight I have something special for you. True scary dating app stories. And we have a special guest who is an up-and-coming narrator who I know you will love, and ask that after this video you go check him out and subscribe if you enjoy. And lastly, before we begin, I just want to shout out my amazing channel members and Patreons for continuing to support me in this channel. It does mean a lot. With that said, let's begin. I was looking forward to my date tonight. I carefully put on my lipstick and slim-fitting dress, excited to meet this man I'd been talking to on Tinder for the last 3 weeks. I find it adorable that he has not yet met me and wishes to cook me dinner at his own place. A nice amount of effort made on his part. I get a taxi to his house and I'm greeted warmly with a smile and a hug. We sit down on the couch and he pours us both a glass of white wine, my favourite. As he got up to check on the dinner he was cooking in the kitchen, I noticed my glass of wine was fizzing, which is unusual as it's not a sparkling wine. I switched our glasses before he returned to the lounge so that he now had the fizzy drink and I sat sipping the still wine. We spoke for around 20 minutes before he voiced that he was tired. I observed that he appeared sleepy, and before I knew it, he dropped his wine glass on the cream carpet and was passed out on the sofa exactly 30 minutes after he poured us the glasses of wine. He appeared dead to the world with noticeable splashes of saliva around his mouth, drooling in a deep sleep. I looked around me wondering if this was a coincidence, but then heard footsteps upstairs. Odd, he said he lived alone. I immediately felt my heart rate raise and my palms become sweaty as I heard footsteps come down the stairs. I heard a voice from behind the door saying, "Is she asleep yet?" I didn't respond. The footsteps started away from the door and made their way back up the stairs. I felt terrified, unable to control my breathing. I quietly started to gather my things when I heard a couple of male voices on the upstairs landing. I was unable to make out what they were saying, and a part of me didn't want to know what they were saying. Before I had time to think, I burst through the lounge door and into the hall and made a dash for the front door. Locked. My heart sank. I grabbed the keys from the side unit and lunged at the door in an attempt to open it, but I was shaking like a leaf. I heard a clatter upstairs and spun round to look behind me where I see 3 men start to walk down the stairs. I burst through the front door and into the garden. It was pitch black. As I was making my way for the garden front gate, I heard them shriek from the lounge, "You've given her the wrong glass," and the rest was a murmur as I ran for my life and did not stop running.
The story kind of creeped me out. It happened about 9 years ago, and sometimes it just comes back to my mind. It still creeps me out to this day. So, I was on an adult dating site, one of the fetish types. I know. Don't judge me, please. I was just looking for some fun, if you know what I mean. Anyway, I was stupid, and I gave out my information. I gave more information out than I should have. I was chatting with a guy, and he had asked at some point where I worked. At the time I was working at McDonald's, so I told him. He asked which one, and I stupidly told him. We chatted off and on. We hadn't been chatting too long. I also stupidly gave him my phone number for some reason at some point. He would talk to me about how he wanted to meet me on my break and have some fun on my break. I told him no thanks. I don't bring my lifestyle to my job. Anyway, so I checked my messages just before I was due to clock out of work. Luckily I did. He mentioned that he was at my job and told me that he had ordered, I think it was a Big Mac meal. I was like, okay, well, don't expect me to do anything with you. I'm not interested. He then got upset and wasn't accepting that I wasn't interested. I was also scared because I had sent him a face picture of myself, but I had never received one from him. I really wasn't too interested in him, so I decided I didn't need a face pic since I likely wasn't going to meet up with him. His interests weren't what I was really looking for, and I have a hard time just straight up saying I'm not interested. and just slowly started to ghost whoever I had no interest in. Now, luckily, I hadn't told him my work schedule, so he didn't know that I was about to clock out. So, after clocking out, I told one of my managers that I was on a dating site and some guy showed up to my work and I had no clue what he looks like, and that I'm just going to hang out in the back, in the break room for a bit. Luckily, she didn't judge me and just was like, "Oh, okay." So I waited about half an hour before I left. I didn't have a car at the time, and I had to walk home, and was honestly afraid that he would see me and would try to pick me up in his car. Luckily, no one followed me, so I was in the clear. I don't think he ever messaged me, or I ended up blocking him or something after this. I don't know if this really is creepy, but it just creeps me out for some reason that some random person just decided that he would show up at my job and expect me to just want to meet up with him. So yeah, now I just give very vague responses as to where I work now. I don't work in the same town I live in, so it would be kind of hard to pinpoint where my exact location is. This opened my eyes and made me more aware of my information that I give out to strangers. So to you, creepy guy, let's never meet again.
My best friend's wife's friend had a crazy story. They caught the guy, so I can verify that this is true. She went on a Tinder date with some guy who invited her over to his apartment for dinner. For whatever reason, she decided that that would be acceptable and safe, given the guy was a total stranger. Guess he was hot, I don't know. So she goes to his place, and he has it all done up romantic, like candles and everything. Made dinner and poured some wine. Halfway through the dinner, she starts to feel a bit ill. When she mentioned to him that her stomach was upset, she got fairly scared because the dude insisted she stayed longer and had more wine. After he persisted and kept trying to get her to eat and drink more, she felt uncomfortable and left. She said he was really upset, but not really angry, more disappointed than anything, and he allowed her to go reluctantly. She gets home and vomits a bunch. It's late, so she toughs it out, but she felt sick the next morning too, so she went to the doctor. They pumped her stomach and tell her they will run some tests. They figure it's probably just food poisoning, but tell her they will call her if there are any findings worth discussing. A few days later, the doctor calls her. She said he sounded concerned and told her she needs to come in immediately to discuss the test results. She arrived and the police were there, 3 cop cars and multiple officers and forensic trucks as well. Ends up, when they pumped her stomach, they found human meat. She had literally been eating people that this guy was feeding to her. Police asked for the address she met him at, and it ends up it was an Airbnb, and the name that was given was entirely false. The phone number she had called him on had also been disconnected and was no longer in use. Eventually they found the guy. I'm not sure what he was charged with or how much time he served. Just know he was eventually arrested a few months later. An abandoned hospital was not the ideal place for a first date, but I looked forward to meeting my date for the first time in real life. I find it both exhilarating and mysterious that he wishes to meet me at an ex-hospital which had been abandoned for 20 plus years to do some urban exploration. It was once a hospital for the management of airborne viruses and infectious diseases built in the early 1900s. I arrived at the abandoned hospital and my date walked towards me. He looked exactly like his pictures, tall, dark and handsome, and greeted me with a smile as well as a kiss on the cheek. We made our way to the main entrance and I was curious to know what was in his rucksack as I felt unprepared only bringing my phone. I asked what was in his backpack out of curiosity, as it looked heavy, to which he smiled and replied, camera, spare socks and a water bottle. How cute, I thought. As we made our way around the grand but dark and dingy building, we heard noises from afar. There was the occasional water droplet hitting the dirty ground which would make a loud echo noise, but the noises from afar were different, almost menacing. I started to feel my palms become sweaty and I felt uneasy. I asked him to stop messing with me, but he appeared nervous, strongly denying that the noises were coming from him. We made our way around the corridor after corridor, checking out each room as we went and decided to go to the morgue, something that I was not keen on doing. The closer we got to the morgue in the basement part of the building, the colder the atmosphere became, as well as the darkness becoming increasingly unnerving. The silence was so loud I felt uncomfortable, and I'm sure he did as well. Bang! We shrieked and both started running. "Don't leave me," I called after him, but he ran off, dropping his bag, and did not look back. Leaving me and his bag behind him, my pulse was racing and I felt alone in complete darkness and silence, the light from the iPhone torch being the only company I had left. I glanced down towards his bag and felt thankful that he'd left it by accident, as it meant I could at least get a drink before trying to find my way back out of this hellhole. When I opened his bag, I moved a sharp knife, a piece of rope, a camcorder, cable ties and a large grey tape out of the way, but a bottle of water was nowhere to be found. Disappointing. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. If you enjoyed, then feel free to subscribe. If you have any dating horror stories of your own, then please send them over to me in the email address in the description. And with that said, I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you.